There's no need to mystify the cosmos. It's already mystifying enough, and it's increasing in its mysteriousness because entropy, chaos, is increasing. So there's no need to add to it. That would be like committing suicide, even though life is by itself, by its own, mortal. So why mystify the cosmos when it's already mysterious? The duty of the philosopher is to demystify, is to order what is being disordered. It's to uncover what is being covered. It's to bring to the light what is being buried. We already spoke about some basic things about words and their utility, how they are ways of expressing the connection of mind-body. They are ways of expressing the connection of noumenon to phenomenon, symbolizing it. And we've also gone somewhat into the utility of words to nihilism, which is meaningless without words. That's why in the scripture, the quintessential nihilistic spiritual guide, the first sentence is, first came the word. The word is to the meme what the sperm, the gene, is to the organism. So when nihilism, in order to exist, has to infect minds. So whereas originally the pagan, the pure memes emerged out of genes, that is, out of the population being conditioned by a particular environment, and out of this genetic population, ideas emerged, morality, concepts, philosophy, ways to react, to understand the world. But the meme of nihilism takes on the opposite. It's an inversion of everything. So it begins as an idea which negates the world as it is and then attempts to make itself genetic through social engineering, through brainwashing, through words. So words are very important in what I've described as the war like no other. The cosmos is counterintuitive in the same way as it challenges life being organizing, ordering, and the cosmos being a process of disorganizing. Same thing applies in the context of the mind. The universe, the cosmos, is becoming increasingly counterintuitive. Intuition having evolved to accumulate, to gather order, to process order in order to survive, in order to understand the world. Increasing entropy, chaos, randomness means that the universe is becoming, again, incomprehensible, mysterious, mystical. So we don't need to add to this process by mystifying it further. So the usage of words to mystify or demystify is crucial here. And there's many applications of words and their connections, how they connect body to mind and mind to world. Some of the utilities are connecting the mind to the body, connecting the mind to the world, as I said, or to put it in another way, connecting the ideal to the real, or the subjective to the objective. Now when the mind connects to the world, it gathers data, patterns from it to process, to construct its abstractions. When it collects data from the body, it collects sensations, neural pulses, which it then conceptualizes using the only source it can sample, which is the external world. So it uses imagery from the external world to make the the data coming from inside, from internal sources, comprehensible, because the data from inside is in the form of simple neural pulses, and it's the product of the past. It's the past manifesting as presence, then stimulating the mind through the nervous system. So we have a double process of interpretation. One is converting the stimuli that comes through the senses, the sense organs, into something the nervous system can process. And the second is to interpret the data coming from internal sources into a form the nervous system can transmit to the brain, and there to understand it, to conceptualize it. Words evolved in order to aid the organism and its engagement with the world, with otherness. The world, of course, being dynamic, being the sum of all interactions, most of which are contrary to the organism's particular ordering. So this, we already said that ordering is the eradication of certain probabilities in order to make other probabilities even more probable. So the organism requires certain probabilities to become even more probable. This is what survival means. But the world does not discipline itself to the organism's requirements, its needs. The cosmos is what it is. It's made up of patterns, but also of dynamic processes that are lack pattern, and we call those random or chaos. And with each interaction, chaos increases, either in the form of complexity through fragmentation, and that's what we mean by expanding space-time, or in the form of increased randomness. That is, the patterns lose their pattern, their order, and become chaotic. It is the organism that must adapt to the world, not the world to be adapted to the organism. This would be ludicrous. This would be only something an insane person would think. And that's exactly what nihilism is. It's a form of insanity. The organism cannot cope with reality, so it seeks to escape it, to evade it, using words. So now words become a tool for, not for engaging the world, of ordering it, processing it, comprehending it, but a tool for escaping it, for denying it, for rejecting it, for covering it up with words upon words, mountains of words. And ironically, this nihilism always uses positive words. Well, to differentiate the different types of nihilism would also be useful. There's the, I've already mentioned, there's the positive nihilism, and then there's the negative nihilism, or pure nihilism, or honest nihilism. Now, what dominates in modern times is the positive, the pretentious, hypocritical form of nihilism, which proposes the absolute, which is absent in the cosmos. Here it mistakes the abstractions in the mind, which are simplifications, generalizations of the phenomenon, for the world itself. And it projects the absolute as something already in existence out there. This is how Christians use words like God or love, or others have fabricated have baptized the absolute using different words, given the absolute a different name, as if this changes what they're doing or what they're referring to. Some call it consciousness or value or whatever else, the substance, like Spinoza did. These are just different words for the same absolute. Of course, each word gives the absolute a different connotation, a different nuance, which is the only creative part of this. They take a concept that is pre-existing, and then they just give it their own personal twist. For the word to be an effective toy for the nihilist, it must be taken literally, not as it was, as a representation, metaphorically, artistically. So that a nihilist creates this world of words and then actually believes that what he created and exists only in his mind is actually true of the world. He takes the abstractions he's fabricated as a way of understanding the world and then projects these into the world. This is part of the empathy-sympathy confusion, which we will get to later on when we deal with some of the words, the most popular words that are defined in ways which feed into the nihilistic paradigm. The nihilistic paradigm is made up of two poles, like I insinuated earlier, the positive pole and the negative pole, and within that, minds are trapped. The two poles are the two absolutes: absolute order, which is also an end, because absolute order would mean the implosion of space-time into a singular probability, which would be a certainty. There is no interactivity. Interactivity ceases if we conceptualize it. So it's an end, it's a negation of the cosmos. On the other extreme, the absolute chaos describes a cosmos lacking all probability, all order. Everything is possible at any time, at any place. This is what randomness means. Total chaos. Within this environment, even if it's a noetic conception, it's impossible. Life cannot emerge and cannot survive, even if randomness might help it emerge in some form. Life requires order, which is consistency. This is why I use the word pattern instead of any other. For me, it has the most abstract and clean of any other implications definition. Pattern just means something that repeats, a sequence, repeating. The sequence and its repetition is how the brain then interprets, what the brain then interprets as the different elements or the different forms of matter and energy. So these sequences of patterns, of dynamic patterns, is interpreted by the brain, simplified, generalized, converted to a form that it can store, it can process, it can store, it can use. If others choose to use another word, then the addition of the nuance, which the word implies, exposes a motive other than clarity, than objective clarity. Each different word used as a metaphor implies something slightly different, and this slight divergence is what exposes the motive of the mind, which might not be just to expose, to reveal what is concealed. Because like I said, the nervous system collects data from external and internal sources, and this data all enters the brain where it is processed. Now, how much one source of data dominates from the other is what determines the outcome. We must understand that the brain is not an organ that evolved to discover the universe, to see it as it is. The brain is an organ that evolved to facilitate the survival of the organism. So if the organism is exposed to a world or to facets of the world that it cannot endure, it cannot tolerate, which threaten its sanity, its very existence, then the mind will not process this data, or will process it in a way that will soften the impact, will store it away as imagery, fragment it, refuse to connect it to other abstractions. Fragmentation, either being a product of genetic limits or of cultural uh, influences, because modern systems promote a form of schizophrenia, of fragmented concepts, uh, creating minds that hold different contradicting ideas in themselves at the same time, without being troubled by this fact. So the modern can apply one standard in one context and then a whole different standard in another, and this to facilitate not their own survival within the system, and to not go mad, because most minds cannot would not be able to endure a unified conception of the world, which demands getting rid of things that do not fit into reality, into the abstraction describing or symbolizing reality. This is why courage is just as important to the philosophical disposition as is intelligence, processing speed, attention to detail. If the brain is too fragile, even whatever it sees, it will refuse to acknowledge it, will store it away or deny it or reject it, will bury it in its subconscious to protect itself from its implications. Courage is a definite major part in the psychology of the what we call the philosopher. Anything short of it corrupts the end product. Before you come up with solutions, reactions to what the world is, you must first acknowledge how the world is. You can't deal with what you refuse to acknowledge. But let's be honest, most minds don't really have any ability to philosophize. This is why they rely on surrogate sources, others, to do the thinking for them, to be told by them what to think, what it all means. And having no understanding of the world, how do they determine which surrogate, which thinker is telling them the truth or is lying to them? Well, the modern's method is to revert to the most primal method, which is using the pleasure principle. Whatever the other tells them that feels good is flattering, is gives them a hope, sugarcoats the world, is positive in some way. The modern considers good, considers truth. Whatever makes him sad, makes him angry, makes him feel insulted, makes him feel afraid, the modern calls bad and error and untruth. To add to the confusion, a word may refer to one or more noumena, one or more patterns, some of which refer to phenomena and some do not. This is how the mind sometimes piggybanks the irrational along with the rational into one concept. It inserts the delusional, the detached, into the concept, along with other with concepts that are with noumena that are attached to the world, making a unity, which can then confuse the mind, because now they associate the rational with the irrational.